because the mind has certain structures, and you can actually go back in time and revisit that moment and take the codes of that moment when it was actually working fine and bring it back. And it doesn't have to be the whole code. It could just be the code when it comes to, let's say, that gentleman who told me about fear. Well, right before he was born, he didn't experience that fear. If we can take that piece of code and bring it to now, he would actually not experience that fear.
You have wondered what you would be able to do if you were the ultimate version of you, right? You would then have an easy time creating what you want, and yes, effortlessly enjoying life too. Now, you may know this already, the influence you have over your reality is far beyond what you've been told. Soon, you realize that your outer world is merely a mirror of your inner world, and we're here to connect the dots for you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GODMODE.
Welcome back to God Mode. Happy to have you here. I'm joined by William Lamb and Michael Mahoney, and we've actually got an amazing topic for you today. It's self-sabotage, and I don't know if anyone listening has had experience with that before. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But if you could learn how to fix that, and whatever that may be, and however that manifests in your life, if you could fix that and identify when it starts and have a plan in place to address it, to change it, and to exhume it from your life forever, would you want to know how to do that? Cool. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to the pod, you guys.
Thank you. And as promised, we'll talk a little bit about what happens in sales, God.
Definitely should, because once you learn some skills from what we teach in Sales God, self-sabotage really is not even part of the reality anymore. I think first, let's begin to talk about this label of self-sabotage, because when you say self-sabotage, we talked about this in our previous episodes too. What comes to your mind, right? What images, what feelings come to your mind? And how can you begin to remove and replace self-sabotage, the word, with maybe just like, oh, there's an error. There's a glitch in the code right now. Because that's how we look at it, guys. There's no failure, there's only feedback. So when we get feedback of the results not exactly the way we want it, we need to look at the codes that are going on inside first.
Yeah. Self-sabotage is a funny thing. It's like you are creating an obstacle or a problem so that you couldn't achieve your own goals. I mean, I always ask, when would you decide to do that? If you were to know, right? When did you decide to create that obstacle? It's actually oftentimes created in the mind before the event actually shows up. So you oftentimes, if you're self-sabotaging, the person's at least taking responsibility, right?
True.
And so you can always tell when, if you ask them, their unconscious mind knows, you can always tell when it was created. It was somewhere in the mind before. And we can even trace back to early on, sometimes in someone's life, or early on in their career, or even before that. We've had clients told us, and I'm not going to say this is literal, because the unconscious mind does communicate and store information, sometimes very symbolically, and sometimes metaphorically. So sometimes clients, we ask them, hey, when was the first time you ever experienced fear? Which, may be an element of self-sabotage in their current life, because they're like, I am fearful of this next level and I don't want to approach it. Well, it was interesting when I asked them, was it before, during, or after your birth? They were like, it was during my birth. Oh my gosh, I was afraid to come into this world. Now, you may say, well, this is an infant. How would he or she know?
Right. And then in what state would you have to get someone in so that they can just turn inward and go, oh, it happened during my birth? How do you even do that?
See, the thing is, there's a process that allows us to retrieve information from the unconscious, what we typically don't have access to consciously under such altered states, which we teach in Sales God actually, allows you to get into specific time periods in your life. And I'm not going to promise it's literal, but these information that you extract from your mind under such altered state will get you information like that. Oh, when I was born, I experienced my first moment of fear. And he even explained to me, he said, look, it was because I was coming into a strange new world. I was in a place where I was comfortable. And now, you may say, how would he know that? Once again, using such tools, we were able to reveal pictures, sound, smell, taste, feelings. It's pre-linguistic, sure. He may not know how to speak back then, but that does not mean he does not record pictures, sound, and feeling, because events happened back then, and he has eyes. He had always had eyes, right? And even if he didn't see, he experienced the pressure coming out into the world, literally, physiologically.
Take a number. Yeah.
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 I mean, if you're a first-time listener, viewer of this podcast, I know that might be a very heavy first thing that you just got encountered to. So let's back it up a little bit, right? Self-sabotage. If you have an image in your mind and you're like, hey, I do this certain thing, whether it may be someone who's trying to achieve something with their diet, fitness, financial struggles, and you get into this cycle and you're like, I do something around here and I'm doing good, and then something happens. And maybe you have, as William put earlier, you have got to the point where like it's self-sabotage, so you are taking responsibility. There's probably some kind of negative emotion attached to it. And what William was talking about, we helped the client go back and identify the time in their life when they decided to have that negative emotion run a program for them, an unconscious program. And that's the key there, an unconscious program. So in our trainings in Sales God and in Upgrade X trainings, we show a client how they can go back in time and they can find that decision, find the beginning starting point of those codes and begin to rearrange them. They can make a whole new program from there. Wouldn't that be nice? Where if you knew where the program started, that would be nice.
Here's a good metaphor real quick. Have you guys all used, whether it's Windows or Mac, there's, Mac has it called what, Time Machine?
Time machine.
You can go back in time when the system was a certain way before. And you can remove some files or corruption of files or codes or some settings that are wrong. You can go back, revert back, right? And Windows has something else, I forgot the name. But essentially it allows you to pick a day and time and go back to when the system was functioning properly. We're doing the same thing because the mind has certain structures, and you can actually go back in time and revisit that moment and take the codes of that moment when it was actually working fine and bring it back. And it doesn't have to be the whole code. It could just be the code when it comes to, let's say, that gentleman who told me about fear. Well, right before he was born, he didn't experience that fear. If we can take that piece of code and bring it to now, he would actually not experience that fear. And he'd be like, whoa, as if that fear never existed.
So we obviously have talked about this in prior episodes. What's a few ways that if someone was to join with Sales God that we help them overcome self-sabotage with linguistics or other tools that, what's some topics that we could talk about?
So go ahead.
Well, I just think it's interesting what you were saying, Michael, because someone that has owned this idea, okay, I'm introducing self-sabotage. I am acknowledging this thing. That's a big moment, and I think it needs to be properly highlighted and double-clicked on. Why? Because it's kind of, AA has that first step, which is someone needs to admit that they have a problem. Well, I don't know the ins and outs of that and how much psychology and planning went into that. What that sentence may look like in a more trained language state is the first step is admitting you have control. And you have control over a lot more than you realized. And if you have now arrived at a place where you're saying, oh, okay, I've heard people talk about this self-sabotage thing. Oh my gosh, is that what I'm doing? Whoa, I'm in control. Kind of don't like that. Kind of starting to go, wait a minute, are all of these decisions or these things that are occurring in my life, like how much of a role am I playing in that? Okay, so is it self-sabotage? Sure. Now I'm accepting. I may have some control over that. That's actually really empowering.
Powerful.
Right?
So powerful.
Yeah. So then it's like, now that you're in that place where you've looked at the label, you've inverted it and gone, I don't want to do that. What are some steps?
Now, something you brought up that's amazing. It's they acknowledge they have control, right? And so when you dial up the percentage of control you believe you have, it dials up how much your unconscious reveals to you.
Dang.
Your mind reveals to you if you listen to our previous episode where we talk about sales God and what we teach you how your consciousness, your mind interacts and interface with your reality. It's actually through our unconscious mind. In fact, we cannot interface with the physical world without the unconscious. And so with the unconscious programs that exist, if we were to become aware that there's only about 126 bits of information that we're processing per second, and the unconscious is processing 11 million bits, or it can, right? Or that there's 11 million bits of information at any given time, but the unconscious will delete, distort, generalize that information and boil it down to 12 bits, 126 bits. And so 126 bits is very little compared to 11 million. What I'm saying here is simple. If we are choosing to take less of that responsibility at how events occurring that we like or dislike may have something to do with us, if we don't acknowledge that we have control and we lower that percentage down to zero, our unconscious mind will show us almost, if not completely 0% of the data that exists within that 11 million bits. And it won't let it come into the 126 bits to show us, hey, here's something you could do to change. Instead, if you were to up that number, even taking 50% responsibility, you begin to dial up the number, it begins to reveal to you, your unconscious will show you, hey, here's what you may be doing, right? But if you take it to 100%, which is magnificent, you will get massive amount of data. Think of the rule, the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule. Many say, in our economy, right, 80% of the economy is produced by 20% of the companies or individuals. Well, think about our minds. In our minds, 80% of the problems that we may be experiencing can actually be postulated to be caused by 20% of some of the programs we have.
Whoa.
But if we refuse to take 100% responsibility, let's say we only take 80% responsibility, we may not see the last 20%, which may be literally the 20% that's causing the sabotage in 80% of our lives, which is huge.
So like 80% of your life's actually going pretty good in this description, but then there's a 20% factor that you were more or less, probably more, doing, looping, iterating, and it's impacting like the vast majority of someone's life.
Now, of course, I'm saying this is a postulation, but you could begin to see how this makes a lot of sense, actually. But it may not make complete sense just yet because you don't know fully what that 2080 is. Because until that is revealed by you choosing to take 100% responsibility, you can't tell exactly what that 2080 is because right now it's hidden, it's unconscious. It's buried in that 11 million bits of information. It's not coming to your 126 bits. So when you begin to acknowledge, yeah, there's self-sabotaging, you're taking responsibility, it's the beginning of a great news. You're like, well, now what do? What's the skill set that we need? Now, let me say one more thing. One thing to consider is that there are a lot of things that you can evaluate in life. There are plenty of people that sit around and meditate, and not saying that's not a good thing, it's a great thing, but then they don't do anything physically to measure what they meditate on. And there are plenty of people that will do spiritual, mental, emotional work that do not translate to physical results. Here's what I always want people to consider is that what's better than going out and interacting with people, doing things that create an exchange of energy, giving people services or products that allow you both to grow. For example, something like sales or leadership, persuasion, influence, speaking. These things that we train in Sales God are the practical platform or usage of your change that you experience inside your mind. So in order to accurately and realistically measure, did my change of this 20 actually cause the change of the 80? I think that you ought to participate in either, some sort of persuasion, influence, sales, leadership, management, or speaking. And look, we can't escape, not in like a bad way. We all get to experience one of those things, if not multiple of those things, if you're doing any sort of business or working for anyone, working for yourself, either way, you're going to experience persuasion, influence. Because look, if you turn on your phone, you're being influenced. Even if you don't turn it on your phone, right? If you're watching TV, watching movies, and if you're going to your job, talking to a colleague, you're like, but I'm not in sales. Well, do you have people that you work with? You can't possibly be transacting with yourself only, right? Anytime when there's value exchange with any other human, even if you go to, a
Chipotle.
store. Yeah.
You're in line at Chipotle. The secret hack at Chipotle. You get the first scoop in, you pause, and you go, actually, let me get a second scoop of protein. Then you get 2 big scoops. If you tell them it's double protein right away, they stiff you. They don't give you as much. That's a John Madsen hack right there. Influence is in everything.
Now, that's not officially Chipotle's practice. It's just that's humans' unconscious practice, right? Because we're not going to say that. What we're going to say is that there's someone, it's the worker who's thinking, oh, double protein, and they're just making a measurement in their mind, right? But now you got tangible measurements. Tangible measurements is key. So in order for us to really prove to you that changing your mind will actually produce something that you want in a tangible manner, this is why we created Sales God.
And that's why the foundations of Upgrade as well with the focus challenge flow so well into there, because a lot of people are like, well, how do I do this? Design. Begin to design. As you design, you extract these codes that are not serving you, as William was talking about. And when you extract these codes through the design process, because the design process, a lot of our clients are like, I got stuck at 40, I got stuck at 50. Good. That's where you know what the boundaries are. Now begin to push and pull with love and respect, right? Self-acceptance, self-love for yourself. Push and pull on those boundaries. Design work will do that, I promise you. And that will then help you get into the next level of Sales God, where we then give you even faster skills to really, really accelerate this.
Can I say this real quick?
Yeah, of course.
You shouldn't sign up for Sales God unless you're prepared to give us all your referrals. Everyone you know, everyone that work with you, your friends, your family, your neighbors. I may sound like I'm joking. I'm not. Here's why. Because you will experience truly the persuasion training that one has always been searching for without knowing they're searching for it. Because some say out there, some scientists out there, and in fact, a lot of people may agree, because think about it. How do you feel right now? If you're sitting down or standing up, the feeling where your body's touching the chair or your feet's touching the ground, or are you holding your head up with your arm, or are you crossing your arm, your leg? Are you drinking water? Are you not drinking water? Are you blinking? Are you breathing? All of that, the breathing rate, the swallow, every single little bit of those things that you're not conscious of, that's run by your unconscious, including your heartbeat, right? So humans do not function without unconsciousness. There are a lot of automation that occurs. Anything that's automated is unconscious. So much of our communication is unconscious. If you think that you're going to only speak to other people consciously, you are only speaking to the 126 bits rather than the 11 million bits. You're missing out so much. Now, by chance, if you work so hard, ridiculously hard, then you'll be able to succeed massively, hopefully. But those tend to be the outliers. They tend to be the outliers. And the worst thing that someone can tell you to do is to just work harder, because you would spend the next 10, 20, 30 years just to work harder and then discover, wait a second, there's a pattern. And the pattern is those who master the unconscious and understand the interaction of our consciousness, how it interfaces with the unconscious, therefore interfaces with the reality we live in, how you can persuade, how you can change your emotions, how you can change the pictures, how you could do all of those things. There's a training specifically on something that we teach in Sales God on 16 patterns that allows you to mathematically reduce a sentence, any sentence, into 2-part structures that you can work on. And you can work on it using these 16 patterns so you can win every single argument you ever experience. Now, the point is not for you to win every single argument.
Go out and argue with everybody. I just win them all now.
That's not necessarily the point, right? The point is, imagine being able to win an argument and they genuinely believe you.
They're like, dang, you're right.
because you alter the structure in their mind, not just words. You're altering the structure of belief. You're altering the structure of value simply by how you label and use labels to create pictures, sound, feeling, and emotions in their mind so that they walk away or as they're sitting there, they're getting goosebumps. They're like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been wanting. This product, this service, this leader, this whatever it is, I've been searching for you.
It sounds like a superpower. Sounds a little bit like a superpower. Let me ask you this. The idea of self-sabotage, the idea that there is now a degree of control and ownership. Person listening to this right now goes, wait a minute, engineering this thing, steering it so it actually helps and serves me, this is great. In a binary world, though, it's like on the other side of completely removing all patterns of self-sabotage ever, on the other side of that, then that's that unlimited, abundant state. It's not exactly that. That's a binary if-then. When in reality, you can begin to win, bring things to you, have the unconscious mind, focus on the right things while still working with that pattern and trying to reduce its presence in someone's life, in their life, in my life, in everyone's lives. How does one move forward and identify the things that occur as self-sabotage? You can't, it's not necessarily a one and done. As time goes on, something new may come up in a different frontier of life that you hadn't yet encountered. And you go, wait a minute, is that also self-sabotage? It seems like what you're saying is that this isn't like some sort of magic erase thing. You do it once and you're good. Instead, it's really a refined tool. It's meant to sit on your tool belt. It's meant for you to constantly grab and apply to the situation that you're in, and you're constantly in new situations. And basically with this understanding, this external perception, this inner perception, and this clarity, it sounds like you can take this sharpened tool to just basically every situation you're in going forward, and then quickly identify, okay, that would be a self-sabotaging pattern. Put that over there, remove it, embrace these things. Does that seem like a good way of describing how this fits into people's daily lives? Because we can't promise people are going to be perfect if they learn how to manage and stop self-sabotaging.
There's no need to be perfect.
Yeah, it's not about so much the perfectionism. I'll answer first and then William, give yourself. Resolve negative emotions. Resolve negative emotions as fast as you can, because if you're getting triggered by anything that we're saying on this episode, if by William saying, hey, just work harder is not the good program, and you're getting triggered by that, you need to resolve your negative emotions. If William's saying earlier is by, there are some people out there and just meditate and they just pray or whatever, and it's not about good or bad, but if they're not going out and putting application out there, if you're getting triggered by that, I'll be very blunt, good. It's time for you to resolve the negative emotions that come up. If someone else does something or says something and you get triggered by it, resolve the negative emotion, because those are the codes in there holding you back or perpetuating self-sabotage.
Yeah, there are two parts to self-sabotaging. One is the skill side of things. The other is what you focus on. Remember the last episode, if you listen to it again, there's the frame and there's the content. The frame is the skill here, and the content is what you focus on. There are a lot of brilliant and incredibly intelligent people in this world that self-sabotage. Pessimistically, they focus on what they don't want. You know, when I ask you, what do you want? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Some of you are thinking about what you don't want, and you don't even know that you're thinking about what you don't want. See, I meet a lot of extremely incredible people, whether it's their love for their family, the work they do to serve others, and or they're just incredibly skilled, smart, accomplished. But something very interesting, amongst this group, there's a subgroup of people that are extremely pessimistic about the world. They utilize their skills in this context to project what they don't want. And they don't even know it. They could be so accomplished, so good at what they do, but their worldview is, this world sucks. People are not good, and they take advantage of each other.
Everyone's out to get you.
Greed and war and all that stuff. I'm not saying there isn't. What I am saying is, if that's their focus, attention and focus going there, think about what is the modern internet economy? Attention.
Right.
Attention is money. Attention is energy. Energy flows where attention goes. So if they're focusing on what they don't want, what they don't understand is their consciousness having a picture of something they don't want, the sound, the feeling, the smell and taste. And that picture, the more they focus on it, the more vivid it gets. And if their unconscious mind's highly skilled because they have trained themselves to be very good, proficient, effective at their profession, whatever they do, that unconscious interface, the unconscious interfaces with the reality by projecting what they don't want into reality.
Like really effectively, because they're really good at doing that.
Really fast, really good.
Jeez.
It's a super quantum computer.
Yeah.
Like project some stuff you don't want. Dang, I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
Now, not only are they self-sabotaging in this world, but the world itself is being sabotaged by these individuals. And on top of it, the lives of those around them that they care for, not to mention, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're like, see, this is how I perceive the world. And look at the world. It proves itself. This is not the observer's universe. Observer is the creator's universe. This is the creator's universe.
And you got cycles of that just being passed down generation to generation.
And many of us are projecting still the unresolved stuff from our predecessors, our parents, their parents, our boss, their bosses, and people that came before us. So the problem that we need to resolve isn't just you need to focus on what you want. It's to acquire skills that allows you to recognize what you're focusing on is not reality. It's what you're focusing on. Now, I said that very simply, and it sounds super simple, but let me say it again. What you're focusing on is not reality. It's actually just what you're focusing on. And that's actually getting projected into reality as a result of your projection. See, a lot of salespeople will say, oh man, the client's saying no. Or business people will be like the partner, the investors are saying no. But the problem is it's your projection. It's not the client saying no, it's you're projecting the no. Now, I'm not gonna get involved and say, let me get you a yes, if your projection isn't gonna change, because it is your world. I'm here to provide you skills, encouragement, and potentially relationships. But if your projection doesn't change, I can only help you so much because it is your universe that you are in charge of, right?
That's right.
I think a lot of people, when they first run into this concept, it's so exciting because then you're in control. Like, wait a minute. Life isn't just this hurricane, wind, chaos. I'm just a leaf. It's tossing me every which way. I gotta land wherever I do and just hope I make it out and hope that some other divine intervention, somebody comes in and gives me, no, like I'm here to take control. That's like really empowering. But then to take some of those first steps, it's like, okay, it might feel like uncharted territory, but it's definitely the right thing to do. The more accountability, this is what I learned from Upgrade, is like the more I take like radical accountability, the better I get. And it's not obvious to me where that edge is because I keep finding it. I keep thinking I've done it. I've taken 100% accountability. I've done it. Box checked. I got all of it. And then something happens and all my patterns will kick in and then it'll be like, oh, well, this is a simply external thing. It's like, no. That's a new edge. That's a new edge for you to push towards. And you may not like it, just like actually all the other edges and places where you took accountability, kind of initially you didn't like it. Maybe you did. Maybe you're into that. But to see that next one and be like, this is the tool that I'm refining. It is the ability to say, okay, there is no failure. There's only feedback. I'm getting feedback. So am I going to be the kind of person that embraces feedback, grows, or am I going to delay that and then still eventually become that? There's a quantum outcome for you.
Let me give us an antidote to self-sabotage.
Oh, I love this.
So 2 pieces. One is from the will I accept responsibility or not to will I accept responsibility radically or will I accept absolute responsibility? There's a difference, right? Radical and absolute. Absolute means truly all of it. Beyond 100% perhaps, if there's something beyond 100%. It means all of it in all the realms, all the planes of existence, all of the dimensions. You take full responsibility. Here's why. I'm going to say something kind of out there for you to consider. Maybe it'll sound philosophical. However you want to interpret it, that's fine with you. I do want you to consider it, however. Imagine if your conscious mind and unconscious mind, this interaction, your conscious mind makes a decision. You're like, okay, given what William, Brady, and Michael has shared with me so far in God mode, I decide I'm going to take absolute responsibility. Your unconscious mind's response will be, are you sure? And if you confirm with a yes, and then what it does is it will go out and map as far as you're willing to accept responsibility for. And this mapping, I'm going to use a funny analogy. Like if any one of you ever play video games, you know probably the name Age of Empires. I'm going to bring it up. It's a great game from
Classic
back in the day.
computer
Classic,
strategy
right?
game, top down, move little units around. You
And
go over there.
Frankly, that's not the only game that does this, but when the character begins or when you begin, you only see a certain part of the map. You don't see all of the map.
That's right. Since everything else is obscured in shadow, except for what the little area you're in.
That's right. That is how our world and our universe or our multidimensional multiverse, how we experience that. When we choose not to take responsibility, in fact, when we choose to take very little responsibility, we live in a little box, that's how far the unconscious mind will go on map. But if you're like, no, I am the master of my own universe. I am solely responsible for the good I can do, and all of the good I can do that I haven't even explored yet, I'm going to explore. Your unconscious mind will then confirm that and go out and map as far into the other dimensions as needed. See? We're sending the cops out to map the world for us.
This is an emergency threshold moment for a lot of people. Another example is I like to automate a lot of things, especially chores. I like my Roomba a lot. It's actually a Roborock. And when I set it on the floor, it's never been in the room. It's a little Frisbee with a vacuum. What does it know? But it has LiDAR, so it bumps around the room. And if I just said stay on that side of it, it's not going to know what the heck the rest of the room is. It's got to bump into some walls. It's got to find some things. Then once it does it, well, it can navigate that thing seamlessly. It's mopping, it's sucking, it's doing all this stuff. Shout out Roborock. Also, that is a great analogy for
so good
venturing into the unknown and being like, okay, I'm going to bump into some walls. I'm not going to get triggered by the fact that I'm bumping into some walls. They're just walls. They just exist. Do I, as a baby crawling around, get mad that I'm crashing into the chair over and over again? Or do I just baby crawl around the chair? The chair is there. It's a thing. It can either exert its force on me by me, I can't get past the thing, or can I just baby crawl around it? Can my robot bounce against the dishwasher, bounce against the table, figure out where the chair is, and then solve the map, fluidly navigate things by embracing a little bit of resistance and knowing that by embracing it, there's just wins on the other side of that. Smoothness, ease, fluidity.
I like that analogy. I think Upgrade gives that robot hover ability, though. That it can just hover above it, because the zoom in, zoom out flexibility is a masterful skill of someone who wants to take massive responsibility, not for the associated, just the associated, but also being disassociated through the observer's eyes. As we've said many times, you're not just observing, you are creating. So to zoom in and out, there's responsibility not just through your own eyes, but also where am I here now? And if you're just listening, my hands are moving in and out, zooming out. That's the level of flexibility and responsibility you want to get to if you want to really break self-sabotage.
Well said.
Yeah, there's a good solution. And, we'll tell you this right now as the last thing. We'll just sell you the map of the multiverse. You don't have to bump into walls. You don't have to bump into things that you don't want to. We sell you the map. That's why we built Sales God. That's why we built Upgrade X. That's why we built the new launch product, the focus challenge, the self-coaching, all of it, right? If you're wondering how you participate with us, I think start with Sales God, because it gives you direct mapping to the physical world, tangible things, tangible skills, and you can test what you're learning and what you're changing in your mind, how it responds in the physical. Start there, because I think that you're going to find some very delightful results when you don't have to create the map yourself.
Yes.
Talk soon.
Like, share,
Yeah, subscribe.
all this good stuff.
We love you. Definitely subscribe, though.
See you, everybody.
Still love you.